This morning we are beginning a new series in these all-age slots, which are going to be called When Life Gets Tough, How Can I Be? And this morning we want to kick off by looking at thankfulness. You'll probably have worked that out from our story already. When life gets tough, how can I be thankful? Do you know, I noticed something about myself during the lockdown. That I only tend to notice the amazing things that are in my life that I take for granted every day when these things are taken away from me. So I had never really been thankful that I could just pop out for a hot chocolate or another beverage of my choice with a friend until the opportunity was taken away and I was grumpy about it. And I'd never really been thankful for the ability to spontaneously jump in the car with a family to visit a National Trust or a garden centre or an interesting bit of old wall. My life is pretty rock and roll. Until those things were all shut down during lockdown, and even now I have to plan ahead to arrange a visit, which is rather irritating. And perhaps I had never really been thankful for being in a packed church on a Sunday morning, worshipping God amid all the chaos of running toddlers and songs that were not entirely my cup of tea, until it was no longer possible. When I realised how much I missed it. As human beings, perhaps especially in the Western world, we are remarkably good at forgetting to be thankful for everyday things, unless that is, these things are taken away from us and we suddenly notice how much we miss them. Whether that be our things or our freedoms or our health or our relationships, we only notice things when they disappear. Things that were once considered luxuries all too quickly become necessities, either within a generation or within weeks. And that thought got me thinking, and it made me ponder how many things are there around my house that I just take for granted without even stopping and giving thanks for. I, unlike almost all of my ancestors who have gone before me, have clean drinking water available to me at the turn of a tap. My loo is connected to a sewage system which takes away, well, you know what it takes away, cleanly and safely, which massively reduces my risk of getting sickness or disease in my own home. And as we head into winter, I have heating available to me at the press of a button. These things are incredible innovations and inventions which are really rather recent, yet I barely give them a second thought. I bet though, if any of these things were taken away from me, I would sit up and take notice fairly promptly. Which brings us to today's Bible passage. You have this story set in the arid, hot surroundings of the border between Samaria and Galilee, a place for outsiders and outcasts. It is about what must have once been 10 perfectly ordinary people who had been going along with their perfectly ordinary lives until one day they noticed the beginnings of some kind of horrible, probably highly infectious skin disease. And everything changed almost overnight. They lost their normal. They lost their health, yes, but they also had to leave behind everything else they knew, their possessions, their jobs, their homes, their families and friends, because the law stated that they had to live outside of the towns away from healthy people to avoid the risk of spreading the disease. Now, we know nothing about the backstories of these 10 men, but if I was one of them, I would be pretty furious about everything that I had lost. All the things that I had taken for granted and never really noticed before. All the God-given gifts that made up my normal. I would be bitter, angry and desperate for things to return to how they were. If only I could get my life back, I would think. My possessions, my job, my home, my family and friends, then I would always appreciate life and be thankful for every moment, for every good gift. And then one day, unexpectedly, these 10 men met Jesus and their desperate hopes were realised. They were healed. Things could go back to how they were. And the reaction of 9 of them, perfectly understandably, as it would have been my reaction too, is to dash back home so that life could just get back to normal. Of course, we don't know for sure, but my gut feeling is that any well-intentioned thoughts they may have had about going back to their normal lives and then fully appreciating it and being truly thankful were probably short-lived. Life goes on for these 9 ordinary people, but nothing looks any different after the first exhilarating new days of their return to health and normality. But for one of them, and a Samaritan at that, a religious outsider, something deeper, more significant, and more wonderful than a return to normal life appears to have taken place. This man cultivated thankfulness. He threw himself at Jesus' feet, recognizing that this was the only possible response to such an amazing gift. Again, we know nothing of what happened to him, but I suspect, or at least hope, that this moment of thankfulness and this encounter with Jesus was not a one-time passing event, but the sign of God at work in his life in more significant ways. But then perhaps I'm reading too much into it. What is clear, though, is Jesus' acknowledgement of his thankfulness. This was clearly the proper response to receiving a good gift. There is no denying that this year has been and continues to be challenging in all sorts of ways. We have all lost things, freedoms, and perhaps more than that. But as Christians living at a time and place where many of us have running water, loos and heating, we may well find life richer when we notice and appreciate the gifts we do have, rather than just the absence of those we currently don't. But even more than that, as Christians, we have the best gift in the world. We have on offer to us a relationship with the God who created the universe. We know we are loved, that life has meaning, that we are a forgiven people, not because of what we have done, but because of who God is. Find ways to remember this, to not take it for granted. The 9 men who rushed home to get life back to normal missed out in a big way. Don't add yourself to their number. Life is richer when we are a thankful people. Life in all its fullness involves a spirit of appreciation. So start by appreciating the small things today. That toy, that friend, that loo. Thank God for them. Thankfulness, the more you do it, the more it changes you. The more you notice Jesus, the more you gain an awareness of God, even in the face of loss, challenge, or hardship. So I'll ask that question one more time. What is it that you are thankful for at the moment?